My hair is actually in rollers, so I have my hair wrapped up because I'm just leaving it like that in rollers. It's actually, I put mousse in my hair, and it's been quite a while since I put mousse in my hair. It felt really good. I think I sort of messed with it though because I was like doing different things with it, just setting it and just changing how I was setting it. But the top part that really hasn't moved much since I applied the mousse feels really good. I'll have to see how it turns out. But anyway, I have rollers in, and I just wrapped it so that I can do this video without like noticeable rollers. All right, this video is about a couple of things. It's about, it's a dream update where I have these dreams that will have a continuation, like I'll dream like portions of things, and then at different times, different nights, I'll dream another portion and another portion, and I'll realize that there's like a continuation, or there's like I guess that there's more to the dream as I dream. I realize, oh, when I wake up, I realize, wow, that was another piece of that scenario. And so I have these common dreams, which I've talked about a lot, and I talk about a lot in these videos, astral projection, lucid dreaming videos. And these are dreams that I've identified over time as I documented, wrote my dreams down, and then looked back at my dreams. I realized that I have these dreams that occur often, these situations or these locations or these activities, that I'll do often. And I use those dreams as points to become lucid. I also have dreams where there's just like these heightened dreams and I don't become lucid in them, but they stand out. So there are several different dreams. One of the dreams is that I'm on a school campus, and I think there are like two different scenarios with this, but yeah, anyway, I'm on a school campus and I'm looking for a class to go to, and there's something having to do with the class. So there are at least two scenarios with these repetitive sort of situations that I find myself in dreams. One is where I don't know if I'm going to be teaching or if I'm going to be a student, and that's a certain type. And then there's one where I'm on a college campus. It's usually like my alma mater, and I'm there and I'm trying to find a class. I'm trying to remember what class I'm supposed to go to. I am trying to go into a building to get my schedule so that I know where I'm supposed to go. That's the whole thing that's going on. And it seems like sometimes I make it to class, and then sometimes I'm just kind of like, okay, what class am I supposed to go to next? And it almost feels like I can remember, but not quite. And it's this dream that I have. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with real life. That didn't happen when I was in college. I had my schedule, had a planner, and, I didn't have issues with going to class and needing to, trying to figure out what class I'm supposed to go to next. But this happens in the dream world. So, so this time I got a little bit more of the picture. It was another piece to this dream. And it was this feeling of like, what class am I supposed to go to? Like, where am I supposed to be going? And I'm there. And this time I actually made it to a class. Like, just suddenly I was there. I wasn't lucid. It was just like a heightened dream. Yeah, so I just was in a class suddenly. And there were several people that were there. Let's see, there were maybe like 10 or 12 people. And I don't know if everyone was standing, but several people were standing. And there was a man in particular. There were several people. They were not dressed in modern clothing. They appeared like ancestral. There was one man, there was more than one person that was teaching, but it was like a group. The group that we were, our thoughts were all shared. They were all being shared somehow. Components of our thought processes were helping to build and communicate. It was interesting. That was going on. It's like when you're in a team, you're like accomplishing something, whether it's work or whatever it is, that someone is doing, and everyone is communicating and thinking and contributing, and it works, and people have flow, and everyone throws in, their, how it is to get whatever it is, going. It was like that, but it was a little different because it was like all of these minds were together. And there was something that stood out to me, as well, this other thing, and it was one of the I know it was one person in particular that I felt was communicating and saying things and teaching me something. And I remember I tried to like almost like I wanted to remember like what clearly is, being taught. And then I should have wrote it down as soon as I woke up to see if I would have been able to capture anything. But what I remember it was like a way of thinking, like a way of looking at things, like a perspective, or it's a different way of looking at things. And so I know that it's in my unconscious mind, right? Because it was being taught to me. I could feel like that energy, that vibe of what was being taught. I wasn't able to bring it out into the waking too much, except for that perspective, that way of looking at it was like looking at the world, reminded me of my teacher, and how at first I remember when I first started learning things from him. I remember it hadn't been too long since I had graduated from college. I remember what people learn in college. It's like stuff that's like not that old. Like some stuff is old, like if you're gonna study history and like ancient documents and stuff, but like there are other areas, where it's just based on like certain methods or whatever that really aren't that old, and then you hear someone that talks about that same given thing or that same aspect of humanity or of the mind or of consciousness, but they're coming from thousands of year old perspective, where it's an older way, an older system, and it's so much more profound, and there's so much more to it. And I remember just feeling like, wow, so like I learned in college from like in this topic and this type of stuff is like infancy, like it's like a drop compared to what I was learning there with my teacher. It was absolutely phenomenal, like just a beyond a completely different understanding, like just so much more profound. And the other thing that it reminded me of was the artistic way of looking at things, or an artistic way of thinking, an artistic way of how things come into being. And that's what it reminded me of, that dream and what was being said, and like how things were being looked at, like looking at it from this perspective, like looking at the world from this perspective. That energy, that pattern, I remembered, and it reminded me of how my teacher thinks and teaches, and the stuff that I've learned from him over the years. And then also it reminded me of an artistry. And I'm going to give an example. I'm not like some great drawer or anything like that. Most of my art is in like classical dance training, which is an artistic system, right? It's part of the arts. Other ways, there are lots of different ways to tap into artistry, like there's music, there's drawing. I mean, there's so many different ways, so many different things in art. And I'm not going to talk about all different forms of drawing because I don't know about all different forms of drawing. I'm just going to talk about what I remember learning in art class, and that stood out to me, and what I've looked in like art books and stuff about realistic drawing. And I'm not going to talk about all different kinds of drawing and all different kinds of realistic drawing. I'm just going to talk about a specific thing that is a mindset is a way of thinking and looking at things. It's very specific that stood out, and I would say is similar to what I recall in the dream. And for example, I remember a teacher, an art teacher, was teaching me, and she said, she was saying to the class, you know, how it's real. We're going to be going into realistic drawing, and she said, you just draw what you see. So there were these shading exercises and these different exercises to get us out of left brain thinking. And she was saying, yeah, well, you know, if a person, you know, uses their left brain, and I'm not, like I said, you know, there's artistry and there's artistic energy and all sorts of different forms of drawing. But this specific approach is the only thing I'm going to talk about. I'm not saying that other forms of drawing and other styles are not artistic and don't have some of these elements. I simply am not going to address it because I don't know about it. So I'm not saying yes or no about anything else. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. So she was saying, like, yeah, you know, if you can ask someone, you know, draw an eye, like, what do you think it's like to draw an eye? And this is just a really kind of basic example. And she said, well, a lot of people would do like an arch, you know, and then another arch. I don't know if you can, hold on, let me get a marker. She would say, like, you know, some people would think, okay, let's draw an eye, you know, and it would be like a curve and a circle and you know, some eyelashes or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, she'd say, you know, but a lot of times, like, drawing an eye doesn't involve necessarily drawing an arc. There may be all sorts of other movements and shapes and shading and all sorts of different other things that are involved with drawing an eye that you're seeing. And so this was about drawing exactly what you see. And so what we did, as you know, some of the exercises is an upside down drawing exercise where you take a drawing, and she gave it to us and we weren't able to see what it was. And she handed it to us with upside down and a piece of paper on top. And that piece of paper on top was, you know, covering the drawing. And she said, just draw the lines that you see. Don't worry about what it is. You know, don't worry about if it's, you know, an arm. Is it a wheel? Is it just draw what you see, you know? And that takes one into a different way of thinking. After a while during the exercise, like, time feels different and thoughts are different. You know, it's almost like thinking without words almost, right? Like thoughts without words, kind of, where you're not labeling things, you're not putting things into boxes, you're not categorizing anything. You're just in this free flow of just, what do you see? Draw it. And do not give it a name. Do not categorize it. Do not say, oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. So I'm going to pull up the drawing really quick. Yeah, and I have the drawing right here. I printed it out. I ended up like just doing like a Google search for it, like upside down drawings. And then I opened it and I actually did a screenshot and cropped it and printed it. That was just the easiest way. But like, so for example, I have this drawing, and this is actually one of the drawings that I did. So it's like this, the drawing is upside down. And so then I just see right here. So what do I see up here, right? And so I would just draw, right, what I see right there, right, and then here, and just draw that. And then once I draw it, then I pull it a little bit more. It's upside down, right? And again, I'm just going to add to it, right? And I'll just continue to do it, right, until the whole drawing is complete. And the whole point of it being upside down is so that a person isn't thinking about what it is. They're not worried about what it is that they're drawing. And she said the reason why this activity is done is so that a person gets out of left brain thinking, of thinking like what a given thing is. Like, oh, that's a this, oh, that's a that. She said, because then a person will go into categorizing and take within themselves, oh, well, this is how it's drawn. It has this, this, and this. And that's interfering with what's actually in front of them and how actually it is presenting itself and what needs to be drawn. And so it's sort of breaking barriers. It's eliminating categories and naming things and whatever. It's just this flow of of drawing. And there are certain parts of this particular drawing that where as you go upside down, you start making out what it is. And she said there's a certain areas where, you know, it's clear what it is. And she says that those are the areas that she noticed with students with their work are the areas that end up being the least accurate, because then the person goes, oh, it's a this, and this should look like this. And so they start kind of projecting these sort of labels of how it is that it should be drawn, and they start leaving that realistic position of drawing, that right brain way of drawing. So I thought that was really interesting, and it's a really fun activity. Yeah, there's all these like upside down pictures and stuff that a person can take and use as, you know, activities, and that like helps with realistic drawing, because I remember after doing doing that kind of stuff, this kind of upside down stuff, and just, you know, being more like into realistic drawing, more of a realistic that perspective, that I could just look at things that were face side up. Like I remember there was a photograph of a cousin of mine, you know, it was a baby photo, and I looked at it and I just was able to draw exactly what I was seeing, and I wasn't worried about the label of what it is I was looking at, like the eyes or whatever. I just was drawing what I saw. And so that perspective, that way of looking at things, it reminds me of, it was a similar kind of energy to what was being said to me in the dream. And another thing that's interesting is certain kinds of spirituality that work with dreaming. The people that practice that kind of spirituality will often describe themselves as artists. They'll be artists. It'll be like this ancient group of, you know, this spirituality. They were artists. So it'll be like artists or craftsmen, something relating to art, which that makes sense to me, because it's artistry. It's tapping into perspectives, you know, that don't have like molds or categories or anything like that. It's just this like free flow way of looking at things and of thinking. So yeah, so that's an update. It was really neat. I wasn't able to remember words. I know at some point I was like trying to like, what? I wasn't lucid, but it was neat because it was a piece of that dream, that experience in the dream that happens at different times. And it's not a repetitive dream. It's not like it's not the same exact dream over and over. It's the same scenario over and over, but I'll be like in a different part of campus, or the campus will look different, or I'm in a different stage in this whole situation that I'm in the dream. This time I felt like I was a little bit further along because I was in a class. I saw people that were there, and I was being taught something. And there was this like feeling of like how thinking was happening. It was like this, it was several minds, that part, and then the part where there was like direct teaching, and it felt like it was an artistic perspective, which is really neat. So that's a dream update. Yeah, dreams continue. There's this continuation, and they expand, and there's more and more that gets added to dreams at times. Oh, you know, there's another exercise too, and it's like a puzzle. It's like a worksheet, and there are all these like little squares, and they're all scrambled, right? It's a picture, but it's scrambled, and there's shading, like different sort of shading, and you have a grid that is in order, you know, with like A, B, C, D, E, F, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know. You take a square and you draw it in the right order. And as you draw, and you just draw what you see in the box, the shading, you don't worry about what it is and trying to make it into anything. You just draw what you see. And when you're done, you end up with a picture of something. And that's another one of those exercises. I'm going to see if I can find that. Puzzle out of order, grid. let's see. Oh, here it is. Okay, so mystery grid puzzle. So I just put in Google puzzle out of order grid drawing, and then I clicked images, and several of them came out. And sometimes when you click on them, like you can't access the whole, like you want to download the document or whatever. So what I do is I just click on it and I screenshot it. And then I go into the screenshot and I open it up and I crop it. And then I just print it that way. And that way I don't have to worry about like downloading anything. So anyway, there are a bunch of those. Those are really neat. And that's like kind of the same kind of thing. I'm probably going to do some of them because I really enjoy doing them. And it's really relaxing. And yeah, it's really nice and relaxing. So